Friday night, Run Pure Sports. I'm JT Hayes. It is a 13-game slate for this Friday night slate, a couple of weeks before Christmas. For those of you who celebrate and are pleasant, you know what the rules are. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you're not already a member, use code HEBLITZ, that's Giblets44. Get 44% off of your first month's payment, your first week's payment, your first day's payment. I'm just kidding about that. But we'll get, we'll run into it a little bit more quickly here because we do have a 13-game slate. AP, we were talking about this, and, this slate, to me, there's a ton of guys ruled out. There's a lot of injury news, but it doesn't mean that it shapes up like a stars and scrubs slate. It kind of shapes up more like a mid-range build slate to me, just because a lot of the best plays are getting extra run because they're the last guard remaining. They're the last center remaining. We've now got some new guys ruled questionable for the late night games in just the last hour here. I think it's an exciting slate for a 13-gamer. I think there's probably 8 games, 7 games you could just cross right off and then focus on those remaining games. But how are you doing? How's your week? I know we talk about this. We like the 6, the 7, even the 8 gamers. But for a 13-gamer, I think there's some edge here, considering that ownership doesn't look like it's getting too wild on some of these better plays.
Yeah, I do like the smaller slates. They're pretty nice. Tomorrow we get hopefully we get a good contest for the showdown slate. That's going to be a ton of fun. With one game, obviously the midseason tournament championship with the Lakers and Pacers. Going to be a ton of fun to watch. Hopefully they should put out like a million maker type of contest for it. They really should, but we will see. And yeah, I'm doing my best to simplify things on larger slates, and this slate sets up to where it's really easy to do that. Like, we have some what I think are pretty elite plays at the guard position. We have some small forward options that are popping, and we have some values that I'm going back to. And what I love about this slate is, like, Luka Doncic projecting for very little ownership. Same with Joel Embiid. And these dudes are smashing right now, like smashing. I mean, Luka had we called actually on the last show, triple-double by halftime. I mean, it was insane. He gets another matchup too tonight, and we'll obviously talk about that. But really excited, looking forward to the slate. And I think we're going to smash it, and we're going to make it easy for all the people out there.
That's what we like, smashing like you should be doing to the like button and making it easy for the people, the subscribers who have already used potentially Heblitz 44 DC draft sheet. AP mentions Luka Doncic, who's finally, a little bit of a slower start to the season, but he's getting it going. Joel Embiid playing out of his mind. But can you get to these guys? There's not a ton of value. A lot of the value out there looks thin. And then more importantly, are you actually going to need them? Even if they put up 75, 80 points, you get a bunch of these mid 6, 7K guys putting up 50, 55. All of a sudden, that maybe makes them not necessary. The question, of course, is can you get to them? But what do you see so far? Any interesting stands for you on this 13-gamer?
Yeah, I've talked about a lot on these shows throughout the year where the pricing on DraftKings is much tighter than it's been in the past. And even though we've got, arguably the most consistent, highest scoring stars right now than we've had in years in DFS. I mean, what Doncic is doing, what Jokic is doing, Embiid has kind of joined that party. I mean, these guys are like putting up 60, 70 plus consistently. And I think in prior years, they would have been plays that you do whatever you can to get them in your lineup and fill out the value from there. But it's hard when there's just not much value. I mean, you talked about projecting Jokic, I think rightly or Doncic for 65, 70 DraftKings points. Like, it still doesn't make him, even if you give him that many, necessarily going to be on the optimal at the end of the night, just because of how the pricing structure was. You can pretty much forget about playing 2 of these guys in a lineup on any given night. You just can't really do it. Even if they crush, you're probably not going to get there, because especially on a 13-game slate, which I do think is relevant to this conversation, that means you're going to get more of those 6, 7, 8K guys that get you 50 or 60, right? The more games there are, the more players that have the opportunity to do it, and the higher the overall scores are going to be, meaning if you go to these absolute studs, which like it, it sucks not having Jokic or Doncic on your team when you think they're actually going to crush, but it's just a matter of roster construction for people that are building, 1, 2, 3 teams. It can be really tough to narrow it down. We'll certainly try our best. And, in the past, I kind of preferred the 4, 5, 6, 7 game slates. Now with how tight pricing is, I kind of like having more games, more options, because like you said, for teams without injuries nowadays, it's hard to go to them at all, even if they've got a monster total. So yeah, I do think it kind of narrows down the field a little bit. So I don't mind having more options to choose from, especially after this kind of slow week in the NBA. It's been really fun watching the in-season tournament, but 2 games on a couple different days this week on Tuesday and Thursday. I'm happy to get back to a monster slate and have, all the players in the pool to choose from tonight.
Yeah, and we like those because that's where other people can make mistakes, right? They can get tricked into using guys on a team that's fully healthy. But put a little reminder up for the people. Hit the like button. It's down at the bottom of the screen there. It's going to tick away for the first few minutes. DC, when we get halfway through the slate, what I'll ask you to do is choose the number that we need to get to for this Friday night happy hour at Run Pure Deportes. But we'll get into this starting with the first game. It is Toronto at Charlotte. The news here is, I guess Mark Williams is probably the biggest news. He is questionable. Nick Smith Jr. doubtful for Charlotte. And Frank Ntilikina remains out for Toronto. Jalen McDaniels is in. Christian Coloco remains out. And one more bit of news for Charlotte, AP. Leaky Black is active tonight and available. I don't know if he's in the player pool, but is Leaky Black on your list of potential rosterable plays for this slate? And if not, what do you like from Toronto and Charlotte?
Yeah, he definitely isn't. And, some games are going to go quicker than others, I believe, for us on this slate. Most important news here is pretty simple. Like if Mark Williams sits, we should have a ton of interest in Nick Richards as a value. He would slide into that starting lineup. PJ Washington becomes a little bit more intriguing as well. Outside of that, like the Raptors, not a team I typically like to target too often. So if Williams is in, probably a team that I'll be under on. And then on the Raptors, again, it's the rule that I always have is Scotty Barnes or Pascal Siakam. Pretty good matchup here against the Hornets. Again, I like attacking him much more when LaMelo Ball's playing. He plays with a lot of pace. So, like on the surface, I'm fine being underweight overall in this game. If I get a little Siakam, a little Barnes, I wouldn't hate that at the small forward or power forward position.
DCAP mentioned Pascal Siakam, 8,100. Jacob Poeltl is 5,900. Poeltl's been tough just based on how they play him with the matchups, but anything that you're interested in this Toronto and Charlotte game?
I don't see much in this first game of the night. Again, the bigger the slate, the more cautious I think you got to be in terms of giving up roster spots to marginal early players. You need to feel pretty damn good about those players to lock up an early roster spot. I don't see much in this game. Nick Richards would be the guy, as AP mentioned, if Mark Williams does miss again. Got 28 minutes against Chicago in that last game without Mark Williams when he got the start. I think kind of unlucky to only get 25 fantasy points out of him in that one, but still got the job done at his price tag. 4,900. I still think he's a solid play, but I think center, this is the case most nights, but it's pretty clearly the best value position on this slate, whether you're looking at value or top end plays, right? I think kind of up and down the pricing spectrum, center's the best place to be. So I don't think Nick Richards at 4,900 would become a must play or anything. I actually wouldn't be shocked to see him go a little bit over owned just because it's the first game of the night and you get the news, right? And so you get the starting lineup of Nick Richards is in the starting lineup. It feels like maybe some people would swap to that on the news, which I think is fine, but I certainly don't think something that you have to do. And then, even with a good matchup against Charlotte, I don't see a ton to love on Toronto with their team mostly healthy. Not quite the same great matchup for teams going up against the Hornets right now without LaMelo Ball. Just the way he pushes the pace really creates a better game environment overall. So pretty low in this game. We'll see with the Mark Williams news, but yeah, other than that, I don't see targeting much here.
We'll stick with you heading into the next game. Detroit at Orlando. Orlando is favored by 11, 228.5 total here. The big news here on the Orlando side, Jalen Suggs is going to miss this game. Markelle Fultz, of course, remains out. Jonathan Isaac is out for the Magic, as well as Kevon Harris, and Wendell Carter Jr. is also out. Yeah. Joe Harris is going to play for the Pistons, as is Jet Howard for the Magic. DC, I don't know if Jet Howard's in the pool, but I think in this game, you've got to be looking to these Orlando guards in this matchup against the Pistons. What do you see?
Are you like trying to catch me and AP sleeping on one of these players where you're going to mention a scrub in every game? You know, it's Jet Howard here.
He's gonna catch us one of these times.
It was Leaky Black one game, and I feel like in the middle, you know, maybe on the 8th or 9th game.
I wanted to say who a couple times. I'm like, who?
I am looking at official reporting, and I am passing on official reporting, and I think the people need to have the question asked so that they understand if starting with Leaky Black and Jet Howard is the way to go in their lineups. I personally don't think it is, but I want them to hear it from you.
I don't believe you. I think you got something up your sleeve, and you got some scrub that's going to be a great play that we're gonna dismiss for the 8th or 9th time in a row, and you're gonna spring it on us. So I'm looking forward to JT's super sneaky DC and AP has never heard of him play of the day later on during the show. This game, I will say, I think it's more interesting than the first one for sure, due to all the injury news. Detroit, I mean, lost their 18th straight game last time out, blown out again at home by Memphis. I mean, tough scenes for the Detroit Pistons right now. They did lose, to add insult to injury, Jalen Duren out. I think he might be, 2 weeks with an ankle injury. Their coach talked about shaking up the starting lineup, shaking up the minutes to some degree. I mean, he's kind of been doing that outside of Cade Cunningham for most of the season, but maybe make another change. I've heard speculation that Isaiah Stewart may get the start at center today. If that's the case, I think it would make him somewhat interesting at 5,500. I certainly would play him at power forward and not center, but I think he would become at least in play. He's the main guy I'm looking at on Detroit. I don't trust what they're going to do with, I think Cunningham's still going to get his minutes, but it sounds like they kind of want Ivy more involved. They've got Sasser and Burks and Killian Hayes. I mean, the team that's lost 18 straight is not really where you want to go, I don't think, on such a big slate. Orlando, though, obviously Wendell Carter has been out. Jonathan Isaac in and out of the lineup. He's out. And then Markelle Fultz has been out. But Jalen Suggs is the big one, the big new one. He joins those guys on the bench. We did see him get injured in the first half of their last game. And, if it had been a late injury, I think Cole Anthony would be the projected starter here. He's kind of the one that makes sense logically, but they did start with Gary Harris in the second half of that game, and they do seem to prefer to bring Cole Anthony off the bench, which I think is what they'll do tonight. He's still somewhat interesting to me given how good the matchup is. There's a good chance he's going to come off the bench and just play the rest of the half in both the first and second half. I think he could still get to his 32, 34 minutes, 6,800, good matchup. Kind of like him a little bit. Franz Wagner has been really, really good for, 6-7 straight games. He certainly gets a bump with no Suggs. 7,900 is getting up there, but he does play a little bit of a weaker position at power forward. So I like Franz Wagner. I like Cole Anthony to some degree. Banchero, I think, is okay as well at 8,300. And then wouldn't go to the Orlando centers, Batadze and Mo Wagner kind of splitting too many minutes for my liking. So, yeah, the Orlando side, the kind of the main guys that are left, I think are all pretty solid plays. And I'm going to try my best not to get suckered into any Detroit guys on this particular slate, especially against a good team and good defense in Orlando. I think there are better spots. But, yeah, the Orlando side, I don't think I'd go crazy with it. But you could certainly mix and match, kind of the Banchero, Franz Wagner and Cole Anthony, I think, are the three guys I'm looking most closely at.
AP, Cole Anthony seems like a good play. Gary Harris seems like a potentially good play, especially if he does, as DC suggested, gets the start here this evening. What else do you see in Orlando and Detroit?
Yeah, so I mean, this Pistons team is just like they're in shambles. They're so bad. Like Desmond Bane put up what, like 50 raw on them? Maybe it was 49 points. I know he absolutely nuked. They just they have no rim protection without Jalen Duren. Defensively, they're just absolutely a mess. And the thing about Orlando that's really intriguing tonight is we could potentially, this is a team that's really deep. Like they've been really deep and it makes them really difficult to play, but they have so many people out tonight that I think we should be interested in a few of these guys. Franz Wagner, one of the best guys at just getting to the rim. And against a team that has no rim protection, like 7-9's a big price tag, but it's a big price tag when typically he gets like 33 minutes. Tonight, he should be pushing much more than that because they're pretty thin. They really are. I think this is going to be one of the tightest rotations we see from the Magic. I could be wrong. Maybe we get some Chuma Okeke, Caleb Houston. Who knows what they do, but still, if we get like an 8-man rotation here, you're going to want some Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Gary Harris. Like, if Gary Harris was chalk, I would rather be under on that, and I would just get more of Franz and Paulo. And then obviously Cole Anthony. Like those three are going to be staples for me tonight. I'm going to have a lot of them. Orlando's favored by 10 points. You got to think like the Pistons come out and with Bojan back, I think he helps to keep them in this one. And I think like on the surface, outside of Cole, like we should be getting more ownership on Paulo, on Franz, and I'm seeing some ownership, but not enough. And so those are two guys that I want to be overweight on. And then I think Bojan on the other side is a potential bring back. I'm with DC too. Like I don't trust Marvin Bagley or James Wiseman. I don't trust those two guys, and I don't think the Pistons trust them. Their backcourt right now is a complete mess, and so it's like Bojan and then Isaiah Stewart. Maybe a few shares of him if he gets the start. If that's confirmed, then yeah, I'm definitely going to bump him up too. So this is one game I do think that is pretty intriguing in this first window of games.
How many Magic are you willing to play on one team, AP?
So I'm set. I love doing this on big slates. I'm setting a big macro rule, like max 3 players from any one team. So that's just a broad, basic rule. The one rule I was talking about is like Barnes or Siakam. I could see myself implementing a rule of like max 2 of 3 of the 3 studs. I just thought kind of studs, Cole, Paulo, and Franz. Like if I could max 2 of those 3, like I want a lot of them, but max 2 of the 3, I think
I think 2 is fine. I think 3 might be overkill on a 13-gamer.
Yeah. So, and it's just because we have so many elite plays too, to where it's like, yeah, I could see 2 of those 3 guys hitting. Do I know which one it is? No. Like Franz could, he could put up a monster number here, and he could be the guy that just takes away from Cole, like absolutely nuking. But I hope like Cole should come off the bench. They love bringing him off the bench. Maybe that keeps his ownership down a little bit. I don't think so. I have him as a core play tag. I was close to like making Franz Wagner a core play tag because he's going to be able to get to the rim whenever he wants. Paulo's going to be able to take that little shot that, the little baseline shot that he always, gets whenever he wants. And with all of the players out on the Magic, they're still favored by 10. It's insane. And that just shows you how bad defensively this Pistons team is. I think they're an upgrade with Bojan back, and that's what I think makes this game that much more intriguing. They should be able to keep in it offensively. And that's what we want DFS. We want the back and forth. So, I definitely like this game a little bit.
All right. We will go on to the next game. Atlanta, the Hawks are in Philadelphia. Philly is favored by 9, 235 total here, AP. Mohamed Gueye is out for Atlanta, as is Trae Young. Big news for the Atlanta Hawks, given the amount of usage that Trae Young soaks up. Obviously, we're looking at Dejounte Murray here, but what else do you see in this Atlanta-Philadelphia game?
Yeah, no Muhammad Guy, I think is a huge.
I don't think he's the guy that's. It's coming later. I don't think he's not the one.
That's a huge usage shift, and we're gonna. I literally couldn't pick that guy out of a lineup. I have no idea who he is. Talk about it.
Leaky Black. He's no Leaky Black though.
So, in this early window, there are a lot of just really good spots. I mean, Philly is playing with such good pace right now, obviously with Maxey, and they push in transition and haven't been the best defensively as well, especially in transition. I think DeJounte Murray, this is just such a smash spot. I have him as a core play. Everyone should have him as a core play. He's a nice guy to build around. But much like I talked about with the Magic, the Hawks, a tougher team to play historically or typically on the season because they have a lot of depth, especially at the center, obviously with Okongwu and Capella kind of splitting minutes, but then more so at the wing position too. This was a spot that typically I have a rule in there, but we have many pieces out now. We should have Bogdan, Hunter, and Bay slide into that starting lineup, and then look at their bench now. Like Garrison Matthews? No, I'm not going there. Wesley Matthews is a defender. We should see a really tight rotation here. And so this is going to be another spot. And I think the Hawks, I think they keep this game close. I think they keep it competitive on the heels of good scoring, a good distribution from DeJounte Murray, good scoring from Bogdan. So this is another spot where I'm fine playing 3 Hawks if they fit into my lineups and building around DeJounte Murray. So another spot that we're going to want to target, we're going to want to have exposure to. Another core building block in DeJounte Murray. If you're new to DFS, NBA DFS, you can start your builds with Cole Anthony from the Magic, like we talked about, DeJounte Murray, and then maybe another piece here, Capella, down big, or try to find salary to get up to Joel Embiid. I think Joel Embiid is just in these matchups, and we have been attacking Capella and Okongwu. We've been attacking the Hawks with opposing centers. There is, only one other center right now that is playing as good as Joel Embiid. And, obviously that's our boy Jokic, but Joel Embiid is arguably having a better year than he had last year. That's saying something. Maybe it's Harden going away. Who knows? But this dude is putting up monster numbers night in, night out. And this is another good spot. And I'm showing low ownership. And that's just a function of how many strong, mid-tier plays are. How am I approaching this in DFS formats? I want to get aggressive with these studs. I want my builds to look like not the same mid-tier build that everyone's going to have with Cole Anthony, even though I just talked about those guys. I want to mix and match those guys in with my studs and then some value pieces that we're going to talk about later. But I'm going to find a way to get Joel Embiid. I think he could absolutely put up a monster number, and that's the run back that I like on Philly. And if this game stays close, you're going to want to have a little mini stack. We don't talk about stacking much in NBA DFS because it's not really that important, but this is one of those spots to where it's like, if the Hawks keep it close, you bet Joel Embiid's going to put up a big number.
DC, before we get to you, Beanair is in chat. Brandon McNair is in here. DGAS is here. Daniel Marnoff was in here earlier. Yeezy. And Beanair, it's like I'm talking or watching Jerker here because he's obviously got our feed and he's ahead of where we're at even in the feed because he's talking about
I think we just
let me
there you go. Yeah.
So that was did Jerker like hack our boy JT Hayes? Because I just see device not connected. He starts talking. I better be careful. I better be careful.
There's like a freeze, right? Where they get like frozen in some funny face while they're talking. He just like dropped off the face of the planet, did JT Hayes. So we'll hopefully get him back. But yeah, I'll talk about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, JT's back now, it seems like. But I'll keep going, JT. Welcome back. Talking about Atlanta, Philly still. And I think a lot of the things you said, AP, makes sense on the Atlanta side. Like nothing, I wouldn't say nothing, but very little changes for me for the centers. Capella, Okongwu, they're still going to split them 48 minutes pretty closely. I do think maybe a potential spot for Okongwu with potentially Capella early foul trouble, right? This could be a game where maybe you see Okongwu in there 3 minutes into the game, and he ends up playing 32 minutes as Capella struggles against Embiid, something like that. But center's so loaded, I don't know if I'll end up there. DeJounte Murray, I think, is obviously a very, very strong play. But like you said, the rest of the Hawks that are going to play significant minutes outside of the two centers, that's Bogdanovic, Hunter, and Sadiq Bey. Like, they have almost nobody else that they trust to play the 1 through 4 other than the 4 presumed starters tonight. I assume Bogdanovic will slide in there for Trae Young. I mean, who's even going to play backup point guard here? Maybe they dust off Patty Mills, who's played 1 game all season. But it could even be Bogdanovic that slides into the backup point guard whenever DeJounte Murray, takes a little break. Then the other guys that are going to play on the wing, the 2 Matthews, Wes Matthews, Garrison Matthews, maybe they bring AJ Griffin. These guys are like, half a fantasy point per minute, low usage, literally stand in the corner and do almost nothing else type of guys. So everyone that's left for the Hawks, Bey, Hunter, Bogdanovic, I think are all going to play both big minutes and have big usage bumps with no Trae Young. So I'm in on this Hawks team, and I think this is a really, really fun game stack if you want to get off, to the early screenshot lead, Big T 777, whatever you want to call it. Play Embiid with all 3 Hawks wings, or DeJounte and 2 of them. And if this game stays close, maybe you get an overtime, you could really be off to the races. So I'm in on Atlanta. Philly side, mostly just Embiid or bust for me. I think Maxey a little bit too expensive, and don't love the matchup against DeJounte Murray either. So, yeah, but the Hawks guys and Embiid all look like fantastic plays to me. I'm definitely in on it, and JT, will go back to you now on the bottom of your screens, people.
Yeah, and we won't make the mistake of casting aspersions on our guy Jerker ever again. But yeah, being there ahead of our feet, obviously. And the other thing to remember with the Sixers here is Kelly Oubre is back. And so he's mixing into that rotation, making it a little more difficult, as you both said, to really consider anybody besides Joel Embiid. Hit the like button if you like surprise disappearances and reappearances, because that has been the specialty here the last couple of weeks at Run Pure Deportes, aka Run Pure Sports. All right. We are now going to go into the 7:30 Eastern window. Washington at Brooklyn. Brooklyn favored by 10, 238.5. All the news here, DC, is on the Washington side. Daniel Gafford is questionable. Ryan Rollins, Landry Shamet, and DeLon Wright are all out for the Washington Wizards. And that means you have another situation where you've got a lack of depth at the guard position for the Wizards. But it means you got to consider Tyus Jones or Jordan Poole. The price is down on DraftKings for both these guys. Or do you? What are you thinking about here, Brooklyn and Washington?
Yeah, Tyus Jones, man, his minutes have been pretty disappointing for most of the year. He is coming off one of the best games of his season, though. Last time out against Philadelphia, did get up to 31 minutes in that one, 42 DraftKings points. And now you've got, pretty much all the other guards out for Washington. So, yeah, at least in theory, this should be a minutes ceiling game for Tyus Jones, for Jordan Poole. I'm not playing Jordan Poole. I'll maybe play Tyus Jones. And then Coulibaly, I think his minutes upside and floor both increase. 4,500 for him. We've talked a lot about the struggle to find value, and I still think that's true. Like, there are a lot of good plays, but most of them aren't $4,500 or below. Coulibaly, a guy that I think you could go to. Kispert, Advia should also see more minutes. So I like the Washington side more in this game than I typically do. Obviously, that would be further increased if Daniel Gafford does miss. I don't know. Do we know who would get the start for him? I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe AP knows. But, yeah, it kind of depends on the news for Washington. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts on what you think Washington will do in terms of minutes of the rotation, because they are intriguing. I mean, they're cheap enough. The backcourt is that if they're going to get big minutes, yeah, I would roll the dice there, but it still makes me nervous. Just hasn't been a rotation that's been easy to trust all year long. Brooklyn does get the amazing matchup against Washington. We've seen centers smash this team. Nick Claxton, I think, is interesting, but again, center is just so loaded that you can say that about the center on, frankly, a lot of the teams tonight. So, again, a little bit hard to get to. I don't see a ton on Brooklyn that I'm dying to get into my lineups. I do think most of their guys are at least reasonable plays, but nothing that stands out to me about a guy that I really need to get into a main lineup or anything like that.
AP Claxton also stood out to me during my first look. I think that maybe a little bit eclipsed as I went through the slate again, but looking at Washington, to DC's question about what happens if Daniel Gafford misses, Danilo Gallinari is cheap, but he's also projecting for some ownership here with people thinking that maybe Gafford is going to be out, and maybe that allows them to get up to a Luka or an Embiid. What are your thoughts here, Washington and Brooklyn?
Yeah, I mean, the Wizards, a team that we enjoy attacking. Obviously, they don't play a lot of defense. Their rotation sucks. Even though there's a lot of guys out, we should, in theory, see a tighter rotation here. It really hasn't been the case. And more often than not, it seems like the second unit, Gallinari, Kubali, Kispert, these guys have really brought them back into games at times too, which leads to more minutes from them, which is not a good thing for, mainly some of the starters like Tyus Jones, Denny Avdia, Jordan Poole, et cetera. Kyle Kuzma is the one guy that's been kind of a staple, tougher matchup. I think this is just matchup-wise kind of a tough spot for the Wizards, and that's indicative of, a big spread here by the Nets side. Mikal Bridges has been in his bag lately. This dude's been putting up big numbers. This is a spot to where it's Cam Thomas was pretty popular last game against Atlanta, and no one's going to play him tonight. He got quite a bit of ownership last game too, had an absolute bust. This is definitely a spot to where in MME formats, find a way to sneak them in. Guard's loaded. There's so many really good plays. They're all obvious plays, and they're all plays that you should be on. Find a way to get 3%, 4% of a guy like Cam Thomas that's just going to make you different. And we know this guy can put up, he could put up 40 raw. I forget who it was in chat. Drew Carpenter. Yeah, I love saying raw. I mean, Cam Thomas is a bucket. This is a matchup against Jordan Poole that he could absolutely exploit and go nuts, and no one's going to play him. So those are the type of plays I want to get better at working in when we're talking about multi-entry formats. In 3-max single entry, no, you're never going to consider a guy like that because you don't really need to on this slate. But if you're running 150, I do think you should, because this is a matchup that we love to attack. And I'm not seeing much ownership on the Nets side, despite the 240 total, despite the awesome matchup against the Wizards. Cam Johnson, the one guy that seems to be popping a little bit, and then Nick Claxton. But you're not going to get a lot of ownership on Bridges, Thomas, or Dinwiddie. And again, I could see one of those guys definitely going off. Who is it going to be? I don't know. That's why we have our rules, and that's why we use SaberSim, our partners, in the optimizer. So the Wizards side, much more difficult. Gafford, I will say, I do think he plays tonight. He practiced. He was at shoot-around, so I think he plays. He's quietly been pretty good, and they're going to need him in this matchup, decent matchup for, to rack up some steals and blocks. So I think he's somewhat interesting. And then Kubali, I'm in on him too. They're going to need him here defensively to handle all of these wings that the Nets have. I mean, they're going to have to put him on someone. So I think we get extended run from Kubali. He's an interesting value play today at 4.5K.
I do got a JT special from Washington, a guy no one has heard of, and maybe you'll play. Last game, with the injuries to Washington, Jared Butler essentially was on the minute every minute that Tyus Jones wasn't as his direct backup. 3,200. I think he would almost certainly get the blowout run if it happened there. And we've seen Washington just really, really hesitant to run Tyus Jones out there big minutes. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Jared Butler play 18, 20 minutes as the primary point guard. 3,200, nobody will play him. If you need a true, and I hate to pin his name on you, JT, but I'm doing it anyway. JT special, Jared Butler. There you go.
Yeah.
Keep moving. Don't even say anything. Don't indict yourself on Jared Butler.
I don't think I'm going to be playing him. I don't think I'm going to be playing him. However, if he got run last game, now they're a little bit thinner. I can't argue with you, DC. I can never argue with you. And our guy Drew Carpenter had his pencils out today. He says Cam Thomas loves playing at home. He averages 10 more DraftKings points at home as opposed to on the road. So thank you, Drew, for bringing that up. There are other people that are being mean and cruel about your math exercise, but we appreciate you bringing that to our attention, DC. The next game, we finally have a game that I think we can go through pretty quickly. I think New York, the Knicks, the Knickerbockers, they're in Boston. Boston favored by 7. 221 is the over-under. Kristaps Porzingis has practiced. He is going to play. Evan Fournier is going to play for the Knicks. Remember, when he was in the rotation, this was a matchup that he absolutely loved to destroy. He really has not been in the rotation. And then, DC, just for you, shooting guard Daquan Jeffries is going to be available for this evening's tilt with the Celtics. Any interest in any plays, Boston, the Knicks?
Yeah, two teams that obviously have a lot of good fantasy-friendly players on them in general. But I think this game might be the easiest total cross-off of the night for me, with both teams fully healthy, Porzingis back. We've seen some of the prices come up for the Boston guys in his absence. Now they've got the full starting five. Both these teams not really missing anybody at all. So I think it will be a fun game. One that maybe you'd watch if you weren't playing DFS, but I won't be tuning into this one because none of these guys are going to make my lineups unless something changes. I'm crossing this one off. No Celtics or Knicks for me tonight.
All right. Bean Air, very upsetting. Fournier is available to play. Nobody said he was playing, so relax. AP, the Knicks and the Celtics, and just let's keep it going before I put Bean Air in timeout here. You were doing good. You were complimentary, and then you had to be hurtful.
Yeah, this is definitely one of the games that I'm crossing off under on. I mean, friggin' Bean Air, like his team, like Julius Randle crying about having to play the Celtics 5 times and the Bucks 5 times this year. Like, come on, Knicks. Like, just put up with it. All because of the in-season tournament or whatever. I mean, no one feels bad for him. But no, look, like Celtics healthy, not going to play any. I've literally just X'd him out. And I mean, Randall's the one guy, 8-7, you could make a case for. Everyone else, no, I'm not playing. No interest at all.
Randall has been smashing. And thank you, being there. We've got Brittany here on a Friday night, and Noah Moon is in the chat. Noah Moon, Bobby's nemesis. He's looking for Bobby and Mangone. You can find them in the lobby, Noah. They're in the head-to-head lobby. Head on over there. Bobby and Mangone. Sweet Travis with a nice shipper on the showdown in NFL last night. They're waiting for you in the lobby. So
Noah Moon coming after that sweet Travis Mangone 26K. I like it, Noah Moon.
Exactly. He wants a piece. He wants some shekels, but it's going to be you gotta earn those, as they say. All right, move on to the next game. It is Minnesota at Memphis. This is the game that Brandon McNair wanted us to talk about early. Maybe he was watching an updated feed. News here, pretty much all on the Memphis side. Luke Kennard is out. Jake LaRavia is doubtful. John Morant remains out. Marcus Smart remains out. Jaden McDaniels remains out for Minnesota. And Jordan McLaughlin is questionable for Minnesota. AP, Minnesota-Memphis. Minnesota favored by 6, 214 total. Any looks here? Both these teams look to be fairly expensive and not really hitting my first builds. What about yours?
I mean, 213 total. Like we don't see that too often in today's NBA. And fully healthy Wolves team, very good defensively. I have zero interest. I'm kind of surprised they're only favored by 5 points. I really am. Maybe we got to bet that game. Grizzlies haven't been that great. Good at beating up on bad teams. Obviously, they need John Morant back. I think he's back in 4 games, something like that. This is a game that I'm full fading. So it's a monster slate. You got to fade some of these games. Make it easy. Make life easy on yourself. This is one that I'm fine full fading.
All right, DC, I want that cat likes the stream. He wants us to get to he or she wants us to get to 300 plus likes. So hit the like button. DC, Minnesota, Memphis.
Yeah, Minnesota fully healthy as they have been for most of these games outside of the couple games that Edwards missed. Awesome team. It's been really, really fun as a Wolves fan watching them this year, but they're a team that's hard to get to for DFS. I mean, they're really expensive kind of across the board. Cat, Edwards, Gobert is expensive now. Conley, I think, is even overpriced. So it's just hard to play any of the Wolves when they're full strength, what they are tonight. And then Memphis, yeah, I mean, You don't want to go.
Actually, I got one. How about this? Jalen Noel revenge. There you go.
Yeah.
How long was he in Minnesota? Yeah. Was he there for like a year?
Yeah, a year or two. I don't think that's a horrible.
He's a player. He's a player, though. He's the only guy I left in my pool from this game, so that's why I brought it up.
All right. The one player in a game pool is good. Everybody else has got Jalen Noel. You're welcome in AP's pool. I love it.
All right. He's swimming in a shallow pool, so to speak. Yeah. Jalen Noel. Okay. We will go ahead and move on to the next game, and that is Cleveland at Miami. DC sticking with you. Cleveland favored by 1, 220.5 total. For Cleveland, Karis LeVert is out. Ty Jerome is out. And Evan Mobley is questionable on the Miami side. Bam Adebayo is going to miss here. RJ Hampton is available, as is Caleb Martin and Duncan Robinson. And of course, Tyler Herro and Haywood Highsmith remain out. And then just a piece of news from the earlier game that we talked about, Brooklyn and Washington. Dennis Smith Jr. now downgraded to questionable. So we'll go back and get the guys' thoughts on what that does for the guard rotation for Brooklyn in particular. But DC, this Cleveland-Miami game, it seems like over the years, the shooting guard has been the position to attack if you're playing a team that's against Miami. And Donovan Mitchell is going to be very low owned at $9K on DraftKings. What are your thoughts here, Miami and Cleveland?
Yeah, I have no problem with Mitchell kind of quietly putting together a huge season. Karis LeVert out. Like Cleveland, they've got Garland and Mitchell, but they don't have hardly anything else in terms of shot creation on that team. So Mitchell and Garland, to a lesser extent, just have to play a big role every night. That would only increase, obviously, if Evan Mobley were to sit. And this game would be better overall if Mobley's out, obviously, for the usage for Cleveland. And then the pace of the game goes up a little bit and the defense for Cleveland goes down overall. So that's something to watch. Jared Allen would certainly get potential. His minutes ceiling, I think, goes way up if Evan Mobley sits. So he would be just, I guess, yet another center that you could consider. And in Miami, on Wednesday, it was Nick Richards and Duop Reith that kind of carried the big center ownership. But we talked about it on the show. One way to get away from one of those guys, make sure you have two centers, because even if those guys have good games, and they both did, they both had the flame emoji next to their name at the end of the night. Orlando Robinson was the much better play when it was all said and done. He was 5K on that slate, scored 46 fantasy points in 33 minutes, going to get another start. He was very heavily praised by Spoelstra. I mean, it makes sense after the big game, but still, it did seem like Spoelstra has faith in this guy to play well when he does get a chance. Obviously, a tough matchup here against Cleveland, but we've seen players overcome, especially in the NBA, tough matchups before. If Mobley's out, Robinson at 5,400, I mean, starting center on a team whose center has a big role typically, and Robinson's coming off a really big game. So I think you got to consider him at 5,400, especially if Mobley sits. I do think that's a nice bump for him. He's the guy I'm looking at most closely in this game. I don't see a ton else on Miami I like. And then I do like your call on Donovan Mitchell as he's going to have, I assume, just absolutely no ownership given some of the other options tonight. So, yeah, it makes sense. He can put up 60 fantasy points and get there at 9K. I don't think Garland is the worst play in the world either, but, they're deep tournament plays. There's no question about that.
Low owned, perhaps a little bit more usage here. Jimmy B joins us. Hope you had a nice week at work there. Jimmy, also doing your day job of picking up the gold dust play of the day. AP, Miami, Cleveland.
Yeah, so, you got to be somewhat impressed with Caleb Martin, the game he had last time. Like, we would think that with Bam out, that Jimmy would become the alpha, but he's still deferring and getting his guys involved. So it's really tough to trust Jimmy. And can we trust Caleb Martin now at a elevated price tag? Like, I'm leaving him in my pool, him and Duncan Robinson. I don't know how much I'm going to get of like a guy like Duncan Robinson, but can I pay? Like, what I'm asking myself is, can I pay 9.3 for Jimmy Butler? I'm going to stick with it. It's just, I think it's the wrong time of the year to play him. When it gets closer to playoffs, we'll play Jimmy Butler. So I'm under on him. Orlando Robinson has been really good. They're going to need size. I actually don't think Evan Mobley missed practice or shoot around. I think there's a good chance he sits. And so this is where, if he does, we're gonna want to have interest in Jared Allen. Like those two, it's like when Allen's out, you want Mobley. When Mobley's out, you want Allen. And I don't mind this matchup too against Orlando Robinson. So again, kind of waiting to prioritize the center spot outside of like a Joel Embiid early on until we get some of this news, because 6'5" for Jared Allen with Evan Mobley out, if he is out, I mean that's a very, very nice price tag. He'd be a center that I definitely want to prioritize. And then it's just Donovan Mitchell. If you like revenge, K-Falix guy, Max Strus, you could go there. He's 3-point shooter. Maybe hits a few extra playing back in Miami. Who knows? But really, it's Jared Allen if Mobley's out, and then Donovan Mitchell. He's just always a tournament play for me, especially on a slate that's loaded with guards. If you play him, you're automatically going to be different because I don't think a lot of people are going to play.
Real quick, the numbers show, Bam hasn't missed that much time. This team's defense, Miami's defense, absolutely craters with Bam Adebayo off the court. It goes from one of the best in the league to one of the worst. I think there's some noise in those numbers, but it does make sense given how good of a defensive, he's, a great athlete, understands the system perfectly. He's just kind of a true defensive anchor, right? He can guard all 5 positions. So yeah, you take Bam Adebayo off the court, and it does make some sense that they would be much worse defensively. I don't really think that's something that a lot of people are necessarily thinking about. So especially if Mobley does miss, maybe that does open up some plays that I still think guys like Jared Allen will go under-owned, even if Mobley does miss.
Before we go on to the next game, DCAP, Dennis Smith Jr. downgraded to questionable in that matchup with Washington. What does that do for your interest in guys like Cam Thomas and Spencer Dinwiddie?
He's been playing 20, 21 minutes. I think for me, it just, if he misses, it tightens up the rotation and it brings more Brooklyn Nets into play.
Yeah, I agree with that. The backcourt for Brooklyn becomes mildly more interesting, but still nothing there, at least off the top of my head, that I really think I need to get to.
Okay. All right. We will move on here. The next game is Golden State at Oklahoma City. The Thunder are favored by 2.5, 236.5 total. Chris Paul was a midday downgrade to questionable here this morning or midday, DC. So what does that do for you? Does that make you more interested in Stephen Curry? Does it make you interested in pods at 4,700 on DK? What are your thoughts here, Warriors and Thunder?
Yeah, I haven't played much Steph Curry at all this year. We're kind of regardless of situation, and kind of seems like that's been, for the most part, a good move. Not that he's had a bad season. He's, been Steph Curry, but he just doesn't have the same ceiling that other guys in that price tag have. I mean, you can scroll through the game log. It's really, really rare that he's getting more than 52, 53 fantasy points, which that's not bad, 9,500, but you're just looking for more than that, especially when you got guys, I know they're more expensive, but the Jokic's and Embiids of the world that can put up 70 plus all the time. And so you only get so many spends. Steph Curry hasn't made the cut for me. That's going to continue to be the case. I don't really see much on Golden State I want to play here, even if Chris Paul does miss. So I'm pretty much off of Golden State, I think, unless you guys can convince me otherwise. For the most part, that's true of OKC. I do think, of the two, it's SGA, weirdly, who has the higher ceiling than Steph at this point. I'd be more likely to spend on him. I think he could absolutely go off in this game. Seems to be taking, more and more control of this team as time passes. Kind of like, Halliburton out in Miami or out in Indiana, these young guards taking control of the team. So I do like SGA a little bit. Another guy, throw him in the Donovan Mitchell bucket, will be very low owned, but has big, big upside. So I don't mind him. I don't see a ton else that I really want to play. Chet Holmgren, I think he's always a reasonable GPP play at 7,700, but I'd be more inclined if he was power forward eligible as well, given that he's just center, tough to get there. So pretty low on this game for the most part.
AP, the Warriors and the Thunder. Steph, to DC's point, it's been a little bit of a sluggish start to the season here for Steph Curry, but now all the way down to 9,500 on DraftKings and potentially missing a guard piece. What are your thoughts here, the Warriors and the Thunder?
Yeah, my first thoughts are I don't have my bets in yet. I got to get them in. I'll do that right after the show, but we should all be hammering OKC -3. I think it opened at -2.5. I don't think it's moved very much. And look, like, here's what's happening. I mean, the books are still overvaluing the Warriors, the name brand of the Warriors, and they're still disrespecting the Thunder. That's just how it is. This Thunder team is good. They are really good, and they're especially good at home. They went out and beat the Warriors back-to-back games on their home court. There's not like I think that bet's like an absolute lock. I gotta get that put in, and I think it's easy money. Especially like the Warriors just haven't been good. They're not this. They're all old. They're definitely not the same Warriors team that we're accustomed to seeing. And Holmgren did nuke, and it was the second game, and he had that 3-ball that sent it to overtime, which was huge for me because I had OKC side and money line in the money line in that game. But yeah, Chet is always always a tournament play. I like this matchup for bigs. Shea, tournament play, but I think this game could get out of hand. I really do. The Thunder are a team that they can run a really, really wide rotation, really deep rotation where Trey Mann, Isaiah Joe, Kaysen Wallace, these guys all, Kynert Williams. I mean, all these guys are going to get in there. And so I would be cautious with the OKC side for sure, outside of kind of the main dudes. Jalen Williams, the price tag is fine. Shea is priced way up. I think he's fine in tournaments, but if I'm going that high, I think I'd want to try to get to Luka on the slate. So I'm with DC. Overall, I'm underweight on this game. Do love OKC side from a betting standpoint.
All right. OKC, Run Pure Bets is where to hit it. What you should also be hitting is the like button. Not nearly enough so far. We took the banner down. It's a little distracting for us. Next game, the Chicago Bulls head into San Antonio. The Bulls favored by 2.5, 224.5 total. Zach LaVine going to miss some time here for the Bulls AP. Alex Caruso, who now is weirdly questionable every single slate. Torrey Craig are both playing, and Dalen Terry is in as well for the Bulls. What do you see here, Bulls and Spurs?
Yeah, so this is the sneaky game on the slate. I think it's relatively sneaky. Like, I think like Kobe, like the Bulls rotation now is really tight. They get one of the best matchups on the board for opposing point guards. Obviously, the direct matchup versus Wemby is not an easy one. But with a guy like Kobe White, we're not worried about that. He shoots a ton of threes. You got to love all the minutes he's playing. 37, 40, 44, 37. And he's been putting up good numbers. The usage rate's solid. Again, taking almost double-digit three-point attempts per game in this new role with LaVine out. DeRozan, I think you can go to him. And then Vucevic. I actually like, again, Andre Drummond, it's matchup dependent. And again, he's not going to play that many minutes. But when he's out there, he has been smashing, like absolutely smashing in these easy matchups. Hornets, Pacers, Spurs. And so I leave him in my player pool just as a way to get a little bit different. Obviously, in that price range, Duop Reith going to get the start. I would prefer him. But again, in MME formats, I leave Drummond in there because he has put up some monster games in minimal time out there, and he's the one guy that can do it. And then on the other side, the Spurs are they're going to shake things up. I think, Devin Vassell should get the start again. One of the problems, too, with Wemby is like the Spurs, they should have kept DeJounte Murray. They don't have a traditional point guard right now. They're trying to figure things out. That's been one of the problems with a guy like Wemby, getting them all set up. And I love this spot for Victor Wembanyama, too. So at home, the Spurs, they need to figure things out. They have been horrendous despite getting Wemby, who is going to be a cheat code, but they're just trying to figure things out as a team. I think this is a sneaky spot. I think Vassell's in play. Wembanyama is going to be one of my favorite studs or semi-favorite studs on the slate. I think he goes off tonight in this matchup. I think Vucevic, bigs against the Spurs, is still a thing. Zach Collins, a guy that we can absolutely attack. And I think this is going to be a sneaky game that is the difference maker in tournaments tonight.
All right, DC, AP high on this game, the Bulls and the Spurs, and Wembanyama in particular. It seems like Kobe White, too. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, AP, we were on the Kobe White, DeRozan train, the Bulls last game, and I'm sticking with it. I mean, Kobe White in particular, I think, is a really, really good play. I think people see, 7,100 on DraftKings, see that price tag and get a little sticker shock. But if you look at the roll, I mean, last 3 games, 45, 40, and 38 minutes. That first one was in overtime, but still would have been 40 minutes in regulation. So playing as many minutes as anybody in the league, jacking up a ton of shots. He's the lead ball handler, rebounding well. I mean, what else do you really want? He's shown the ceiling in his last 3 games. The matchup against the Spurs is awesome. I talked about it on Wednesday. Like, Chicago kind of in desperate times right now. They got to win games. They got to win this game in San Antonio. The season's on the brink for them already. And so if Kobe White's playing well again, there's absolutely no reason that Billy Donovan's not going to run him out there for 40 minutes for the 3rd straight game. I think that honestly should be the expectation in this one. So I like White in particular. I like DeRozan again. If you want to buy the revenge game narrative, he's back in San Antonio where he spent a few years at least. I think he's interesting. He's going to have a big role. Those are the main 2 guys for Chicago. I think Vooch is fine, but won't be going there mostly due to the position scarcity thing. I just can't fit in with the other centers. And then I think this is a really, really good Wembanyama spot. I think you got to be a little bit careful with him when you play him. For instance, I think he's averaged over 2 more minutes per game at home, which makes total sense to me, right? You've got your number 1 best prospect of all time. Of course, you're going to play him more minutes in front of your home crowd than on the road. That makes absolute sense to me. And then, you got to be careful, I think, playing him on back-to-backs. I think they're going to be careful with his minutes to some degree. But I don't know, Friday night at home, in a winnable game, in a good matchup, not on a back-to-back, feels like a good spot to roll the dice on Wembanyama at 8,800. We've seen the ceiling from him several times already this year. One of the few guys priced below 9K who you can realistically, I think, hope for 60-plus fantasy points. So I'm with AP. I'm in on Wembanyama. And, yeah, Chicago, I rank them Kobe White 1, DeRozan 2, Vucevic 3, but I do like all 3 guys to some extent. So pretty good game here. The Spurs, other than Wembanyama, though, man, I just don't trust the minutes. It seems like it's just constantly shifting around him. And I'll pass on everybody else, but I do really like Wemby tonight.
Friday Night Lights in San Antonio for DC. He thinks that Wembanyama is going to have a good game here. DC, we're in the low 100s in terms of likes. Last I looked, what is the number tonight to not get the plays put into the Discord?
We're getting up to close to 400 watching, so we got to go 175. 175 on the likes feels like a realistic number. A flame emoji, if you will, but not a slate breaker. I'm not asking for a slate breaking performance from the people. 175 likes for the plays of the day.
Just looking for 6x, not the 8x, just 6x.
Exactly, 6x, a reasonable 6x.
All right, fair enough. Jacob Stubbs is here. Brandon McNear got a Italian sub, and he's back. That's nice. DC will stick with you. Next game, Houston at Denver. Denver by 9, 221 total. And a couple of fully healthy teams here. Jamal Murray probable. Jeff Green is off injury for Houston. Jock Landale, the only one who remains out. Your thoughts here? Houston, Denver, 2 pretty expensive teams for what we have in terms of health.
Not a ton in this game for me, outside of the man himself, the Joker, who these teams have played already 3 times on the season. And this sounds unbelievable, but Joker's averaging 80 fantasy points per game across those 3 games. I don't know how much more analysis you really need than that. He's at home here where I like him better. Yes, Jamal Murray expected to play. Don't really care for Joker. I don't know if he'll get to 80 and keep that average for the season, but he's going to have a huge game here, almost certainly. You can fit him tonight as your, big stud. I do think there are reasonable builds to fit in one of the true alphas. He would be my preference over Embiid and Luka, not necessarily by a ton, but I do prefer him if push comes to shove. Not going to anything else on Denver, and I think the same for Houston. Tough to play in that Denver altitude, and yeah, just don't see any value sticking out to me. So Joker or bust for me in this game, but yeah, I mean, love the Joker here, obviously.
AP thoughts here on the Houston Rockets going into Denver.
Yeah, so it's, quarter of the way done with the season, and these two teams playing for the fourth time. Kind of seems really weird from a scheduling standpoint, but that's where we're at. And I echo what DC said. Like, no one's going to play Jokic tonight, and he's averaging 80 against Şengün in this team. So I will say that was, I believe, like Jamal Murray was out or limited in 2 of those games at least. Maybe all 3. I'd have to go back and look. So Nuggets are getting healthy, and when this team's healthy, they are very, very tough. So I honestly think like it's a big number. I usually don't bet sides that big, but I kind of think the Nuggets just like blow them out tonight. I think Jamal Murray plays minimal minutes, maybe like 30, but I think he has a big game. Like, I don't think you can play him in DFS, but I think he has a breakout game here. So I'm off this game across the board. I'm not going to play any Rockets. Tough to play in Denver. And yeah, I think the Nuggets get it done tonight.
All right, a couple of pieces of news. Dennis Smith Jr. has been ruled out. Allegedly, Kristaps Porzingis will not have a minutes limit this evening. Javon Town is in chat saying that Gary Harris is starting. I haven't seen that come across, so we'll keep our eye out to make sure that we see that confirmed, AP. And then we'll move on to the next game. It's Sacramento heading into Phoenix. Sacramento favored by 2 here, 235 total. For Phoenix, Bradley Beal remains out. Damian Lee remains out. But also Grayson Allen and Kevin Durant are going to miss this one. On the Sacramento side, Chris Duarte is questionable. Colby Jones is out. And Keegan Murray is off of the injury report. What are your thoughts here, Sacramento and Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be the Devin Booker show. He should be one of the studs that, again, like guard is so loaded, but he's going to be one of the studs that you should consider. No KD, obviously no Beal, no Grayson Allen too. And like Grayson Allen, terrible reputation or whatever, but he's been playing his role really well, like especially on the Suns team too. So that's another big hit. And the Kings are only favored by 2.5 points. The Suns and Devin Booker without KD and Beal went in, and I think they beat the Knicks in New York. So Booker has all the ability in the world to put this team on his shoulder. He's their best player. He is hands down. I know people could argue against me that it's KD and not him. It's Devin Booker in my opinion, and I think it's going to be the Book show tonight. I think this game is more defensive though too without KD. Obviously, Book and KD, it's offensive, just, craziness, but they're going to have to show up on the defensive end of the court, too. Keita Bates-Diop, you could play him, Okogie, are going to be fringe values that you could definitely work into your lineups. Yusuf Nurkic, too, against Sabonis. Tough. I don't like Sabonis is just so good at drawing fouls. I don't typically like playing centers against him, but, we should see a tighter rotation on the Suns side. But for me, it's spinning up for Book if I can make it work. And I think Fox and Sabonis are just priced too high for me on the slate. Monk or Kevin Huerter. These are the type of plays on a 13-game slate that I'm not playing. I'm just Xing them out and moving on. So fun game tonight. I think the Suns steal a win here, though. And I think it's on the heels of a big game from Devin Booker.
Big game from Devin Booker, DC. What do you see here, Sacramento at Phoenix?
Yeah, kind of hard to see anything other than a big game from Booker here. This is a team that kind of gutted their roster to some extent to fit in, right, with the salaries, and you just kind of have to with Beal, Durant, Booker, one of the biggest big threes, if you will, in the league. And so you take 2 of them off the court and Beal and Durant, and it just leaves Booker to run the show here. You add in Grayson Allen being out, and there is just not much here in terms of playmakers. We're going to see, Okogie, Keita Bates-Diop, Nasser Little. These guys are going to have to play big minutes. They are not big fantasy guys. They're in play just because they're cheap and have to play, be out there because someone has to be. But, it's going to be Devin Booker running the show for this team. 10.1K for him feels like a bargain. I do think he's one of the guys who can still compete potentially with Jokic or Doncic, even if they have their big games. I think Booker is definitely capable of putting up 70 in this matchup. That's obviously not the projection or the expectation, but he's capable of it. There's just no question about it, especially in this role. So I like him. Eric Gordon, 6,300 feels like a lot for him, but you can be pretty damn sure you're getting 35 plus minutes out of him. He's going to shoot a ton of threes. I think he's got a good shot at 35 fantasy points in this one, which with the tighter pricing at 6,300 isn't bad. And then the guy that's way off the board that I'm looking at is Jordan Goodwin. I just think this team is so devoid of playmakers with Durant and Allen missing this game. Goodwin's playing, 20 to 25 minutes most games anyway. I think he'll be out there 25 plus minutes. He's definitely going to be the lead guard anytime Booker takes a seat. I think he'll be out there if it goes out into a blowout in either direction. And he's a good point per minute player anyway. I mean, he's sitting right at a fantasy point per minute on the season. You throw in a good matchup, I think 25 minutes, he's 5,200. I think you can project him for 25, 30 fantasy points with upside for more, in case anything happened to Booker or blowout, whatever it may be. And I think he's going to be about 1% owned. So Jordan Goodwin, maybe my lowest owned guy that I've got confidence in tonight. I don't think he's going to hurt you bad. I think he's going to put up 20 plus in most scenarios. And I do think there's a lot of upside for more. So I'm in on the Suns guards, Booker, Gordon, Goodwin. Obviously wouldn't play them all three on the same lineup, but especially on teams I'm not playing Booker, I think going to Goodwin makes some sense to me.
All right, we got two games, roughly 7 minutes to get to 175. So go ahead, hit like, get to 175 so that we can give out the plays of the day. And we got to move a little bit more rapidly through these last two games, DC, to get out of here in time for Up to Lock. The next to last game on the slate, Clippers in Utah. Clippers favored by 7.5, 224.5 total. Jordan Clarkson and Kelly Olynyk are going to play. As far as I saw an update that they were both probable or likely to play. Lauri Markkanen remains out. The Clippers, Daniel Tice was a midday downgrade to questionable. What are your thoughts here, the Clippers in Utah?
Yeah, we got to keep it moving. This is a good game to do so, at least for me. I don't really see much here. I've been off the Clippers since the James Harden trade. Yeah, they've had big games from time to time. I think Paul George is the guy I'd be most likely to play from the Clippers, but I still don't see myself getting to much of any of him tonight. And then Utah with some of their guys back, just a disaster of a team right now. Don't really trust any of them. And huge slate, not going to this game myself.
AP, Gary Harris is starting. We have confirmed that news. He is starting for the Magic. Waverly Williams, Giblets 44, GIBLETS 44. Head to runpuresports.com. You can also see the code there. That is the promo code to get a discount on your first monthly or weekly payment. AP, interest here, Clippers and Utah.
Yeah, so Jordan Clarkson being upgraded to in I think it's somewhat impactful, not for DFS, but just maybe keeping the Jazz in this one a little bit more. I think James Harden on the Clippers is a really intriguing play. We saw what Luka did in a triple-double and a half. James Harden is really starting to kind of embrace this role. The showdown slate is this game tonight, so make sure you go register for that. These late game showdowns have been awesome, absolute printers. But I think James Harden is a really good play tonight. I think Paul George, if the game stays somewhat close, is another intriguing play. It's one of those situations where it's like maybe you play 1 to 2, 3, or 1 or 2 max of the big three, and that's Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden. I also think like a guy like Norm Powell, I wouldn't be surprised off the bench if he crushed. Like Utah, like the Jazz are that bad. They play with pace. They have no defense. They're starting Yurtseven over Walker Kessler, who's somewhat of a rim protector. So yeah, I actually, from a pricing standpoint, pace, if the game stays close, I could see a guy like James Harden putting up a pretty good number tonight. And then I could see like Paul George or Kawhi Leonard going off along with them. So I think in tournaments, this game is somewhat interesting. I'm more interested in the showdown slate for it tonight, though.
All right. We will move on to the last game of the evening, AP. We'll stay with you. And this one, maybe a little bit interesting. Dallas heading into Portland. Dallas favored by 8, 231.5 total. Maxi Kleber, Grant Williams remain out for Dallas. DeAndre Ayton is doubtful for Portland. Malcolm Brogdon is questionable. And Jeremy Grant is out for the Trailblazers. Interest in the last game of the night.
Yeah, I have a ton of interest in this game too. I mean, this is why the slate is so fun. You have Luka, who's 11-8. No one's going to play him because of all the value in plays that we have at the guard position, and it's hard to get up to him. But the dude has been smashing. What has he done since he's had a kid? He's put up a 93-piece, massive triple-double, 36 points, and then he followed it up with 40 points and a triple-double by halftime against the Jazz. And Portland is a similar matchup where they're just terrible defensively. They get Anthony Simons back. In Simons' first game back, he played 37 minutes. I think I was projecting far less than that. I thought he was a lock that game too, but I did not think he was going to get 37 minutes. He took 27 shots. He's going to have all the opportunity. Like, he gets one of the best backcourts in the world to attack. Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, they don't play defense. Like, are you kidding me? I love the over in this game as long as, like, we don't get a lot of Scoot Henderson, who's horrendous. Like, the dude sucks. Like, he is so bad. Let's get all the Anthony Simons. Shaedon Sharpe plays like 40 minutes every game. Get our boy Duop Reith. Give Duop Reith like 30 minutes. Let him just chuck threes. He's not going to play defense. You have Derek Lively with his connection to Luka. This is another game that is just so sneaky in tournaments. So I know we talked about a lot of really good spots on the slate. I'm going to have to find ways to get exposure to all of them because there's just so many, and that's why I like this slate a lot. So, again, I have a ton of interest in this game. It's just trying to figure out how to play these guys. Dante Exum, one guy I didn't talk about, should get the start tonight. It's going to be a chalk value. I'm eating the chase, 4.5K. He'll get the blowout run. He should get blowout round too if the Mavs blow them out, or at least you think he would. Actually, no, they have a third unit that they can go to. It would be Jaden Hardy and their third unit group. But Dante Exum, a solid play as well.
There are people who refer to something called the third unit in a different way, DC. But what are your thoughts here on Dallas and Portland?
Yeah. Dallas, it's really just the two guys for me. Luka, I think, is an awesome play. Of course, I personally probably won't get much of him. I still prefer Jokic. It's always going to be the case for me. It's the case tonight, and you just can't play two, in my opinion. But obviously a fine play. I do think a risky play, but I do think Derek Lively has some serious upside here. Going to be spending his minutes, against like just one of the worst teams in the league in general. That's good for a center, right? Can gobble up rebounds, blocks and steals and all that stuff. And then we did see the minutes ceiling for Lively 2 games ago where he played 39. They won by 50 points in their last game. So Lively didn't see any run in the fourth quarter, but still played 24 minutes in that one. He's interesting to me. I just wish you could play him somewhere other than center. But the Portland side is, I think, the more interesting side. I'm with AP. Duop Reith, I think, remains in play at 4K. I wouldn't play him and Jabari Walker together. Last game, Walker came off the bench, and they pretty much subbed in and out for each other. But I think there's a chance that one of them, would play 30 minutes to 18 if they're the one playing well. Obviously, Portland just needs anyone to kind of step up, and I think anyone that does could get big minutes in any given game. Brings us to Anthony Simons, who I think is maybe the best play on the entire slate. Malcolm Brogdon left in the second quarter of the last game with knee soreness. I mean, he's got an extensive, injury history to knees, hamstrings, whatever it is, lower body stuff. On a team that's playing for nothing, like, I would be pretty surprised if Brogdon was in there today, especially after they got Simons back, right? So now they have at least a little bit of depth. You would think if you had to leave the middle of the game 2 days ago for a guy like Brogdon, you would think he would sit again, but he's currently listed as questionable. And so I think you're going to get lower ownership. He's not going to be low owned. He's still going to be chalk, Simons is, but I think he'll be much lower than he would have been if we already had the news that Brogdon wasn't going to play. So I'm playing this one like Brogdon is out, and I'm loading up on Mr. Simons. 27 shots. I mean, he's one of the very, very few guys. I think he's the lowest price guy, I'll put it this way, who has a chance, an outside chance, to lead the entire slate in scoring, right? He could put up 50 real points. I think we've seen it from him before in somewhat similar situations. This is also a perfect matchup. And if Brogdon misses, he's going to have the absolute green light. So I am, all in on Simons. I think Reith is fine. And then the Dallas guys are fine too. But Simons is the guy that I really want to get a ton of in my lineups tonight.
DC targeting the raw points that we have talked about throughout this show. All right. Where did we get to, DC? Last I looked, we were at 169, which was very close. Did the people get to your very, very generous for this holiday season 175? Did they get there?
You'll have to tell me. I don't know. I don't have the YouTube stream up.
AP, how many? Someone tell us how many likes. How many likes do we have?
Yeah, we can go ahead and just give them if we want. We got to be quick though. I got to do mine first. I don't want to. I'm going back to Kobe White. So there you go. That's my play of the day.
I wanted to announce it. I want to announce
no,
unit play of the day.
Oh, the third unit. All right,
third
Kobe White.
Play of the day is Kobe
Massive
White.
third unit.
All right, there we go. DC, Mom's Basement play of the day.
The Orlando starting lineup. So obviously the injuries, and they're starting Anthony Black and Gary Harris at point guard and shooting guard. Yeah. Neither of those guys really play as kind of lead ball handler guards, right? They're just, especially Anthony Black, just doesn't do a lot out there. I think this offense to start the game is going to run through Franz Wagner, who's been on a tear recently. Matchup couldn't get much better for him against the Pistons. I think Orlando kind of just gets the job done today. And he plays a tough position at small forward. So Franz Wagner, 7,900, the Mom's Basement play of the day.
Franz Wagner, the Mom's Basement play of the day. Kobe White is the gentleman's third unit play of the day. Javontown missed his kid's birthday for this. Hey, look, I get it, right? They've been playing bad, but I think at some point they're going to have to pick it up. They're going to have to play better. And I think this is a game where maybe we start to see the Warriors season start to get back on track. It's a 237 total. Chris Paul questionable, all the way down to 9,500 on DraftKings. Stephen Curry is the Eiffel Tower play of the day. I think he has a big game here. AP, I'm going to go the different route here. I'm going to hope that it's not a blowout and that the Warriors can start to get back on track. But for DC and AP, remember, head on over to runpuresports.com. It's Giblets 44. And good luck in your contests tonight.